Hi, everyone. This is Raquel.
Hi, and this is Jennifer.
Welcome to Madness Cafe.
This is a feminist podcast where we talk about women's issues, politics, and health and wellness.
And where those issues intersect. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Madness Cafe. Today, our guest is Shebana Coelho, and she is a writer, performer, and facilitator of workshops. She's originally from India. What I have seen in my life, she says, is that one catalyst expression can have an incredible ripple effect, liberating your voice out into the world, transforming into seeds for powerful art or whatever, so you are seen as who you are. Wow. There are lots of times right now for powerful expression. So let's talk about all of that with Shebana. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to join the madness.
I mean, we're all kind of living in some madness right now.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are.
You call yourself a creativity coach. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, I've called myself many different things because as an independent artist for, God, at least over 20 more, 25 years or so, I've been on many journeys. Creativity has saved me. It comes really naturally to me, but I would say it's also been sometimes a struggle to say this is the only thing I'm doing, or to make a living on it, and also just to let myself be, because we don't live in a world that necessarily validates creativity just for its own sake. It's always in service of something to help you make money, help you do something else. The work that I do, I perform solo plays, I write short stories and poems, and then I love to see people express who they are, especially using the language of the senses. For me, my whole journey has been to come into my body. So,
Yay.
so it's different for me. Like I lived so much in my imagination growing up that for me, I have to process reality through the imagination. I have to, but it's what my healing has been. And it's what I see has been really healing for people. So, for example, in the workshops that I do, I encourage people to express their feelings using nature images, using sense images, to say that I feel like a sinking stone is different than saying I feel I'm sad, for example. And I feel like when you start creating these, which is something that comes naturally to us, I also feel, it just changes things. It changes stuff in the body, and you're connecting to nature, and getting it, you're connecting to, you're getting into your body in a way that's different than, you know, it helps to say, sometimes you have to say, I feel sad, I this, but I'm just saying my creativity coaching and for myself and for others is to play with the senses and play with nature, because I have found this to be incredibly healing, grounding, liberating, and it helps me to get to the meanness of me.
Can you tell us about your work inviting fear to tea?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah.
That was like the wildest thing I did. I mean, I never expected it. I was beginning to write poetry. This was in 2013 or so. Like I've been writing mostly short stories, theater. And one day I wrote this poem about how every time fear arrives, I invite it in to have tea. And like my best cheap tea on my best china, the kind you serve with a tea cozy, which I don't know if you know what that is. I grew up in India, and India was colonized for over 100 years by the British and also by the Portuguese. And as part of that, one of the things that was introduced was like tea. If you go to India at like 4 or 5 o'clock, everything stops and you have tea, like chai. I mean, it could be, a cup of tea with milk, ginger, cardamom, a little bit of sugar. And you see people in their houses sitting and having tea, but also on the side of the road, you'll see people sitting with a cup of maybe a metal or a glass cup of chai. So I say in the poem that I wrote had every time fear arrives, I invite it in, I have proper tea with it. And all these images start coming to me in the poem of the British, of the colonization of India. And then the other thing comes up is I say, I'm sitting there frozen with fear, having tea. And even when the dancers come, I say, no, 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 I can't go. I'm having tea with fear. And even when the stage comes, I'm like, no, 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 I cannot leave. I have to sit here and have tea with fear till there's a part in the poem where like I see this ant is creeping up the pinky that fear is extended while it sips tea, and it bites the pinky, and fear releases me. And anyway, there's this big song and dance in the poem that I wrote. So I look at that poem and I say, this poem needs to be performed. But who is going to do it? Like, not me, because I'm terrified of the stage. I mean, like, I worked behind the cameras in documentaries. I no, not me.
No.
No. But it was so strong that same summer I saw a notice for a performance workshop, like getting to the source of performance energy, a workshop in India, in this small town in the south of India. This is the other cool thing. In the ancient books of India, there is one ancient text that is called the Natya Shastra, which is all about theater. Like
Oh,
I'm talking about like hundreds of years, like an ancient text about the making of an actual physical theater, but also the 9 primary emotions that a performer needs to know how to feel and cause to be felt. It's the base of a lot of Indian drama and dance.
Can you list those emotions, or is that asking
yeah.
too much?
I was just thinking that too.
Okay, hold on. I can list it. The first one is I just have to look it up because I wrote an article about it. So the cool thing about the emotions are the sound of the emotions is also makes your face into the shape of it. So the first one is called Shingara. Shingara. And
Shingara.
Shingara is like a bliss. It's like a deep bliss. And so that's one of them. And the
God,
other one,
Shingara.
that sounds so much better than just happiness, deep bliss.
yeah, because like Shingara, okay, the erotic sentiment. This is how my teacher, his name is Venuji. He's the one who led the workshop. He interpreted this in his own way. Okay, so Shingara,
Mhm.
Hasya, okay?
Hasya.
Hasya, Hasya.
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 Yeah, like it was Hasya is laugh. So see if you say Hasya, you see how it
Hasya.
puts your face. See? You're
Yeah.
already
Yeah.
smiling, Raquel. Hasya. Then
Hasya.
there's Karuna.
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 He calls it the pathetic, but like Karuna is like almost like a deep, profound kind of sadness, I would say, almost.
Mm.
Oh, Karuna.
Yeah. Then there's Raudra. Raudra.
Laudra.
Raudra.
Laudra.
Raudra.
Yeah, that's like he calls it the furious sentiment. Raudra. It's
Mm,
like almost like an anger, kind of,
It sounds like a growl.
yeah, that's what I'm
Laudra.
saying. And that's
Yeah.
what he said. He was saying like this, it's not about translating it. It's the sound of it that moves your face into the emotion. And
Hmm.
there's Vira, which is
Vita.
heroic. Yeah, which is
Ira.
the heroic sentiment. Bhayanaka, which is like the terrible sentiment, something that's really horrible.
Mm,
Bhayanaka. Vibhatsa, which is a kind of
That's
odious sentiment, he said. Odious. Vibhatsa.
mm.
There's Adbhuta. I don't know if I'm
Ad-
pronouncing that.
Adbhuta.
Yeah. And that, I remember for that one, because one of the things we did in the workshop is first we kind of improvised it, just felt the emotion as us.
Mm,
Then he gave us these small scenes. Another Sanskrit, it's called Kuriyatam, which is an ancient Sanskrit drama that draws on mythology, Indian mythology. So, for example, for Raudra, we had to be this kind of this demigod named Ravana. Okay, suddenly a mountain falls in front of him as he's walking on the path, and he gets really angry. But before he decides to move the mountain around, he looks the mountain up and down, and he sees everything. He sees, because there were people living on that mountain, so they're fleeing, because the mountain has just suddenly fallen. So there's like tigers and villagers. So he would tell us, I want you to look with anger, at all of these things. And I want to see in your eyes what, you know, I want to know what's happening from watching your eyes.
Wow.
Because Kuriatham, he comes from a tradition where everything is emoted. Like, I'm just gonna take my glasses off for a second. In your eyes, like the in Kuriatham is like everything is in the eyes. I mean, you do eye exercises, and so you have to convey like this is Shingara. You just, and it's just in your eyes, you know. So Adbhuta was like, it's the, she calls it the marvelous sentiment, but it's a kind of this surprise that something beautiful has happened, like when the beloved shows up unexpectedly, you know. So
Mhm.
we did that as a scene. And then there's one that's called Santa, which is, you know, tranquility, real kind of surrender. Like, yeah.
Nice.
You know, I spent 3 weeks in India in the where I'm from, but I hadn't been to that part, that town where I went in the south of India. And I ended up spending 2 months in India, but especially that workshop, it transformed me utterly. It took something, and it wasn't right away. Like, I came back to the US, and for a year I was just, you know, I was making a documentary. I was directing a documentary. I finished it. It was like February or something, and I'm like, you know what? This poem that I wrote, the title of it is called The Good Manners of Colonized Subjects. That's the title of
Mm.
the poem. Because
Mhm.
it's like something, it came, and I realized, I looked at that poem like, wow, there is so much in here about colonization, my story, my feeling fragmented, history, fear, art. I said, this is a play. This is longer. The poem was
Mhm.
10 minutes. I said, this is a play. And what I did was I found a place in Santa Fe where I was living. I said, it's March now. In August, I'm gonna present this play. And I and I found a place. I It was the wildest thing I've done. I rented a place for 2 nights. It was the Santa Fe Women's Club. And I just began working on it. And I knew it would have poetry and I knew it would have dance because I had begun studying flamenco.
Oh.
Um, so I knew it was going to have poetry and dance, and like all these things, you know, teachers showed up to help me develop the play. A flamenco teacher, actually an Indian classical dance Bharatanatyam teacher, and I had studied that as a child. That came back, and I presented it in August of 2018. Ever since then, it's totally changed my life because now I love the stage. I've performed the play all over the world, and I do creativity workshops. They have different names, but I call them Your Voice is Catalyst, or Your Voice as Catalyst, about exploring what has kept you silent and
Mm.
what wants to be expressed. And it you don't have to want to perform to do these workshops because they're all about giving voice, getting the stuff that you don't know what the fears are made of and seeing them. So it totally, that little poem, like took me places that I never in a million years would have expected.
I think
Wow.
I get that in some regard. I had just talked about the podcast being a catalyst for the change in our lives.
Mhm.
And so I think I get some of what you're speaking of. I wanted to quote you and then ask you a question about this. On your website, you said, in my work, I seek to get to the oldest root within me, the oldest stone. When I use the word decolonizing, I mean getting rid of the foreignness, whatever is not indigenous to my spirit. That is the best definition I have ever heard. It speaks to those of us who are both, our culture is both the colonizer and the colonized,
Mm,
which is true for me, it's true for my children. And how do we reconcile that within us? And I like your visual of pulling that from ourselves. So how could you explain that to our audience?
mm. My first language is English. Even though I grew
Mm.
up in India, I'm 99.99999%. I did South Asian. But what happened was, to give you where I'm coming from, when the British were deciding what to do about education in India, there was a debate, should we let them learn their own languages or should we teach them English? And there was a debate among the British. And then there was a document written called A Treatise on Education by Lord Thomas Babington Macaulay. And he wrote something like, first of all, like he said, look, let's be honest, like, one shelf of European literature is worth thousands of any literature of India or Arabia, let's be real. And then he
Mm.
said, what we need to do to manage the chaos of India is to create a buffer class. We need to create a class of Indians who are Indian in blood and color, but English
Oh,
in taste, in morals, in intellect, and in values.
oh God.
So it was, and I come from that class of
Mm-hmm.
Indians. I always knew that, like, and I speak English well because I also went to, as part of growing up in India, I went to elocution classes to
Mm-hmm.
enunciate English
Mm-hmm.
because we had poetry competitions in our high schools, in our elementary schools, where you stood like this and recited a poem in
Mm-hmm.
English by heart.
Wow.
All the world's a stage, all the men and women like that. And I always knew this about myself, of course, and I knew about colonization generally speaking. Once I started doing this, kind of committing to this process of making the play, I was like, wow, I've always thought I was better than other Indians who don't speak English.
Mm.
Never
Mm-hmm.
mind, they speak 5 different Indian languages.
Mm-hmm.
There's still in India this thing about fair skin
Yep.
is
Mm.
better than dark skin. I mean, there's still,
Colorism, which is
yeah,
alive everywhere.
Yeah, it is. Colorism is huge.
it is. And it just started this process of like whittling away what is me and what is not me. What are these fears made up? What are these beliefs made of? Where do they
Mm-hmm.
come from? And they don't all come only from colonization. There's stuff in your own family, how your own family is set up, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How I come from a family of merchants. So that also became part of my story, like validating my creativity because it was for the in the I come from a lineage where money is the bottom line. Where say there could be you could come in India from a different lineage where art is the bottom line. I know people like that who like like the teacher that I studied with, he comes from a lineage of like art is the bottom line, Once it's like it's curious to explain. That's why I use these metaphors of the language of the senses. And I feel it's this first, there's like a whittling away. You just start seeing things.
Mm-hmm.
You see, okay, this is what I believe. Like in one of my workshops, I ask people to make a list of who told you to be silent. What did they say?
Ah,
And you just
yeah.
make a list, phrases in any particular order, and you begin playing. So colonization has been analyzed a lot, but there's so much in the body, in the
Right.
spirit, in our beliefs, and what we see when we look in the mirror. Like
Mm-hmm.
I used to not understand why, I'm short, brown. I have hips. I mean, I don't know, compared maybe some people will not think I'm as hippie, but to me, I feel hippie and I've always had a thing about my belly not being my softness of my belly.
Oh, me
Mm-hmm.
too.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's not
Mm-hmm.
just colonization, that's many other things, but it's connected to, in my case, like
Patriarchy,
so
capitalism. Yeah.
yeah, so many things. But once you begin to unravel one of the things you began to see. So for example, I began to see, like, in India, the ideal of beauty was changing as part, like, the people were like, I want to look like more the US now, I would say more America stuff,
Mm-hmm.
thinner, fairer, all of this.
Yeah.
And
And by America, it's more than likely, I'm sure, white America.
yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
I would agree. Yeah, like
Yeah.
popular culture in that way, white America popular culture. And so then once I began seeing, I'm like, okay, Shbana, what does it mean to embrace your own beauty, the brownness of you? What does it mean to make odes to your soft belly and to your hips and play with it? What
Mm-hmm.
does it mean? Like things like that. But when I began to see, I'm like, so it was like that. I don't sometimes I say things that they come out, and I'm like, that's that's like a thing that has to unravel itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah.
but I do mean about like beginning to understand, not in a analytic way, but it's like I spend so much time doing embodied workshops. I
Mm-hmm.
spend so much time dancing, letting myself move. I spend so much time. I'm not a singer, but I have no fear of singing. That is to say, if I have to intone something, I'll do it now because
Yeah.
it's just the body wants to express itself,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's like, what is the part of you that is, it's the thing I feel that people have said this in different ways, but like it's getting down on a root level of why you're here in the world,
Mm-hmm. I love that.
and like what are the things you love, but in the smallest way, you
Mm-hmm.
know
Like getting down to the essence of who you are, what you love, what you fear, what you feel,
yeah,
why you are the way that you are. Right?
or how you are.
Right.
Sometimes why goes into the head, so I always, if it's, I'm here, like I can literally feel my head hurts when I'm not in my body. Like if I
Mm-hmm.
say a sentence that is a bit in my head, then I have to say what I mean by that sentence. I mean, what does it feel like to walk out into the storm and have the rain wash everything away that is
Mm.
not your skin, that is not your soul? That's what I
Wow.
always say in response to
Wow.
that.
I don't know what that feels like.
Yeah,
I know what it feels like to walk out in the rain. My daughter and I did it last night. We
yeah.
walked out in the rain and I felt it coming down. But to wash away everything that is not mine, that is still unknown to me.
So that would be something you begin to play with the next time you're in the
Mm-hmm.
rain, because a lot of it, it's I found it was the asking. It
Yeah.
was the
Wow.
asking. It was almost also creating kind of mythic women, mythic characters, making a myth, not of myself,
Mm-hmm.
but like of the rain, asking the rain as a woman to wash away what you don't need right now,
Beautiful.
in that
Right.
moment.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what, every time I try to, I have to remind myself, what I mean, I can what I mean by it is like, find an embodied, find a nature, find a way, sit in silence and speak a poem to the stone and see what the stone says.
You know, there's a quote on your website,
Yeah.
and you say, I believe we each need a catalyst expression to dismantle structures, visible and invisible, historical and emotional, that keep systemic inequalities alive and keep marginalized people unseen. The revolution begins by expressing and embodying our true nature one by one together. May all of us, especially women of color, live our vulnerable, intuitive, disruptive power.
And then I say,
Like,
Age Chalo, let us go.
yes, yes, let us go. Yes, that, yes, exactly. Snaps for that. That speaks so much in my mind to the world that we live in right now,
Mm.
right now. And not just society as a whole, but we as individuals. What's keeping us bound? What's keeping us from feeling what we need to feel and embodying who we truly are and then expressing that? What's keeping us as people from doing that? What's keeping us as a society from doing that? When I read that, I literally was like, okay, I want to hear Shebana talk about this in relation to what's going on in the world right now. So can you talk about that a little bit?
It's connected to, I would say, what you were saying. How do you show up for things in the world and also show up for yourself? I do believe, this is what I believe. I feel like we're re-entering an age of the feminine.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like
Yep.
in terms of the feminine way of being and seeing, even stuff that we ourselves as women have lost because we've internalized. We've been
100%.
trying to survive.
Mhm.
Demi,
We've been colonized,
right.
not just we as, brown people, but we as women, we've been colonized.
And so many things come to mind. Like, so I feel like the more healed we are as women, that's what I mean. The more healed, we're more at peace we are with ourselves, the more we can lead in a way that is true to our way, a different way of seeing and being in the world. But it requires women being healed and at peace and harmony with themselves, because we have a lot of women in power. People would talk about like, oh, India's so
But
great. India's had a female prime minister. But the question is, do those women lead as women? How do they lead?
yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. A lot of times, not all women, but a lot of women in leadership are leading from the male perspective. They're mirroring what they have seen done before.
And that's what I'm saying. I think that is what I mean. I mean that you have to, the first part of it, the first journey is inward. And that's what I mean about a catalyst expression. For me, that thing about fear, like that, it just took me. It transformed. It doesn't always have to be this way, but it really took my deepest fear, which was being on stage, and made it kind of my deepest passion, which is seeing on stage.
That's incredible, actually. That's an incredible transformation.
I'm not saying that has to happen for everybody, because I also believe it's the most mysterious journey. I really, in all the work that I do, whether it's my plays or the workshops or in conversations, what my hope is to encourage people to attune to their own selves, to their own journeys, to their own idiosyncrasies, to their own way of healing and being and fighting and surrendering and connecting. Like, I would never have imagined this journey for myself. Like, I would never have imagined the things that have happened in the last couple of years. Not just, I'm saying, beautiful things, but also really difficult things. About seeing a lot of stuff, a lot of trauma in my lineage, understanding about colonization. The first journey, when I say catalyst expression, it's to find the thing that allows you to be who you are. Find that. A lot of time, when you start asking, things start showing up that need to be addressed. Each of us defines bravery in a different way. A lot of people will say to me sometimes, because I travel a lot on my own, and people have said to me, oh, you're very brave. But for me, that doesn't feel brave, because I'm not very afraid of it. But if someone says, talk about some of the violence in your lineage, say, now that's,
Yeah.
now that would be brave if I did that. And so what are the things that you got to do, that that it's, you may not know. And so that's, for me, the first step is that. And that just begins another journey. It's not like it catapults you, but it's like and so then, I mean, after that, it's like being vulnerable is brave. And not knowing, surrendering to mystery is brave. Like, for one of my plays, I wanted to learn an old Hindi Bollywood, you say, it says old Hindi song, like from the 50s, maybe, like really 60s. I was studying with a teacher in Bombay. She said, I can show you how to sing and all these things. She said, but those old movies, when they talk about love, women were living in a place where it was a different dynamic, right? So she said, when they're talking about love in that song, there is a surrender, a surrender to the beloved that is so deep. She said, that's what you need to channel to sing this song. Could you do it? She said, do you know what it's like? Do we know what it's like these days?
Nope.
I don't want to know what that's like.
But I kind of, I want for that song, I want that moment. There's a lot of songs in old Hindi films that I grew up with where they're courtesans, and they live outside of like the norms of society. And there's these luscious, slow songs, and they're all like decked out, beautiful, and they're singing for the beloved in their hands, and like the languor of it, and I want to step in, I don't want to live that, but I want to step into that on stage. I want to feel that not to just one person, but like those moments of surrender to art and beauty, to the rain,
To life itself.
to life itself. Ole, yeah.
Yeah. To life itself is an act of surrender.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Would you talk about the fluidity of cultures and communities within your work?
It's happened naturally to me. That is to say that I've traveled a lot of many places. I was in my 30s in New York, living in New York, working in documentaries. And I said to myself, if I died and all I knew were cities, I would really regret it, you know. And I had
Mm.
always wanted to go to Tierra del Fuego in Argentina. Like they're on the tip of Argentina. They're the
Me
next.
too, me too. I want to go.
I would highly recommend going. If you go to the Argentine part of it, you would fly into Ushuaia, which is where I went. And I dreamed of that in like geography class in India when I was a kid. It's because I grew up in cities, this vast open expanse, you know. So I spent that year, it was like I was in Argentina. I didn't speak Spanish, but I learned to learn to speak Spanish. I was in Peru, I was in Bolivia, I was in Mexico. Oh, and I loved it so much. I learned to dance salsa. And I found I was so much at home being on the move. Like it's gave me a kind of stability that I never would have expected. Then I got a grant to go to Mongolia, and I was there for a year and a half. I wanted this everyday experience of big landscape. I lived in the city of Ulaanbaatar, and I also lived with different Mongolian families in the countryside in the 4 different seasons of Mongolia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so if you go, I made a little radio documentary called On the Move in Mongolia. Yeah, and I've been to Palestine. I've been to which is it's really hard to witness
Mm,
that in Gaza. Right now,
absolutely.
Mhm.
I worked with a theater called Ashtar Theater in Ramallah. And when I came back, I think it was from Mongolia, a few years after that, I was writing about it. I was writing an essay about it, you know, what it was like, because I learned Mongolian.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was, you know, not like fluently, but enough that I could travel on my own in Mongolia. The essay was about like how after years after coming back, the language was leaving me, even as the memories were getting stronger. And I talked about what I learned from traveling in cultures that I might not have that I didn't know that might have seemed so distant. I said, you know, Mongolia was literally so far away. And then I would never have imagined that there there were people there that would have become like family to me, you know.
Of
Wow.
course.
And it felt like a metaphor for so much, you know. It said, and I also never would have expected that being on the move in distant places would have brought me home to myself. And so I call all my work Far Away is Close, is another way from I
Mhm.
say, because I say, you know, that culture, that person that you think is so out of your reach, they're closer than you think. Or your creativity, your capacity to find a kind of stability or harmony or to find yourself that you think is so far away, it's right here, closer than you think, under the skin. And it really blooms when in a safe, nurturing spaces that you create for yourself, or you know that other people can create for you in workshops. It's kind of an interesting side by side with this work about colonization, which is about to understand all the cultures that have kind of obscured who you
Mm.
are, made you believe that it's given you in English, given you a
Mhm.
language that doesn't remember you, given you a
Mhm.
language that is not in your lineage, given you an ideal of beauty that is not, you know, in
Yep.
your culture, but just impose things on you.
Mhm.
Side by side with that, there's this journey I've been on, which is like, oh my goodness, we are so much closer. And so there's been this kind of dance with that.
So, for people who are interested in finding their voice
Mm.
and trying to figure out what's my voice and what's the voice of the colonizer? Or what's the voice of somebody else? How do they get to that point? What do you tell people about, or what do you suggest that people do to get to the point where they can discern their own voice from, say, what they've been taught their whole lives, or what society has always shown or been?
I'll tell you, because everyone has their own journey, but I'll tell you some of the things that have helped me and some of the journeys I lead people on in workshops. What are the things we engage with? And the first thing is like finding resources that help you feel safe, whether that's like breath work, meditation, walking, whatever that is, like the smallest thing that just makes you feel like a child in the sense like happy in yourself as much as you can remember. I know everyone has different childhoods, I know. So that might not be a place you go. Someone goes for happiness. It might go in another place. But I think it's like the smallest thing, the smallest, tiniest thing that brings you a little bit of joy. And then beginning to play. And I really enjoy like however you move your body around, whether you do dance and even if you don't want to call it dance, like movement, listening to something, doing flamenco, making flowers with your
Fun.
hands, whatever that is, listening to music you like and just moving, going for like, whatever that is, that we do that a lot in my workshops, like games, like playing, like one of the things we do is like say your name. We could do this if you want to do this.
Okay.
We say, okay, so I'll say my name with a gesture, and then you do the gesture and say my name in the same way.
Okay.
Okay, so if I, for example, I go, Shebana.
Shebana.
Exactly. So now each of us.
Shebana. All right, let's think. What would I do? I would go, Jennifer.
Okay, so we have to all do that.
Oh,
Jennifer.
Jennifer.
All right, Raquel, it's your turn.
Oh God. Oh, pressure. Okay, see, this is where the fear comes in.
Okay, that's good though. That's good.
I know.
Yay, invite fear.
Okay. Hey, fear, have some tea. No, I'm just kidding. Raquel.
Raquel.
Like so.
Raquel.
So we do a lot of that. And we're having fun at that. It's just really like that.
My dog liked it. She came to join.
So that, and then I literally do ask people to invite fear in for tea and see what happens. That's something we can do. So imagine you've invited fear in for tea, and then what? You invite fear in for tea, and then what? See what comes to you. One sentence you say that happens. What happens next?
I think I say, fear, I can sit with you today.
Yeah. What does fear look like? Yeah. Or like invite fear in for tea, and then what?
This is going to sound so silly, but what comes up for me is, so fear, how would you like your tea? Would you
There
like
you
milk?
go.
Do you want sugar? How much sugar would you like?
There you go. And that's part of the journey of engaging with fear, like breaking it down, seeing what it's made of. Like the fear shape is a shapeshifter, everything I'm afraid of, the fear looks different. Small things, like sometimes when I have to go to a place I've never been before and the directions are a bit intricate, I'm like, I don't think on the other side of it I'm going to figure it out. And then I get there and it's really obvious this road goes to that road, goes to that road, goes to that road. There's that Mark Twain quote, about the worst things in my life never happened.
Yeah,
it's true.
So anyway, stuff like that I do. You were going to ask a question, Jennifer. So
I guess I was going to ask both of you, when we sat down with fear for tea, I had an immediate fear come up, like something I'm afraid of. Did either of you have that?
Well, the whole fear thing came up for me when you guys were like, Raquel, it's your turn. Wait, what?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. For me, it was more like I saw the image. Like sometimes I see the first images of when I did the poem. I mean, in my head, I saw fear sitting on like how do those, those desks that you sit on in school that are little, that have the desk built in, and the chair tied together. So I saw a small girl sitting on a desk like that, because eventually in the poem fear becomes young. So that's what came up. Fear is really curious, and it changes all the time, and you change all the time. So inviting fears for tea is going entering into relationship with it, and playful relationship with it, because
Well, and that's something that I think we will, maybe not everybody, but I think as a society, we don't do well necessarily with play. Like we don't really quite
Or
get
fear.
it, or fear. Like we don't engage well with fear, and I don't think we necessarily engage well with play.
I would agree.
yeah, I feel honestly, the older I've gotten, the more playful, the younger I feel, because I, I mean, it just feels so good to, because I feel it's like I'm coming into my essence. Like everybody
Mhm.
is playful in a different way. It
Yes.
doesn't, and
Well, and you're decolonizing yourself, right? Like you're shedding the shit that doesn't belong to you.
And
yeah,
also, I feel like the embodiment piece, because you're allowing your body
yes,
to release. It's just that how can that not be freeing and feel light? And
feeling like the animals, like the description of my play, I'm like a human animal, a human
Mhm.
animal fragmented by colonization, displaced by migration, a journey through history and myth to confront fear and reclaim what was lost, is what I call the play. And I really want to do it more places in different ways. The other two things I'll say that are part of the journey that have really helped me is that you said, I think we've talked about this. Someone stood up after the first performance of my play that those and said, everyone is colonized by something.
Mhm.
So I see colonization, yes, as a historical thing, certainly, but it is also a metaphor, as we were talking about, so many things. What are the things that you are believing that you don't believe, that are
Mm.
put on you? And that's why one of the things I invite people to do playfully in these journeys is like make a list of phrases of things that have told you to shut up, to be quiet, to be
yeah.
silent. Whether
Mhm.
you've said it to yourself, you've heard it said to you, you've heard it said to others, just playfully, like a list. Like don't sweat it, just let it come out. Da, da, da,
Mhm.
da, da. There's something you can do very often, and then you just see it. It's not an amorphous thing.
Mhm.
A lot of the times, I feel the things that stop us is when fear, all these things become like one amorphous, shapeless mass. And
Hmm.
it's like a big cloud, it just pushing you down.
Yeah.
Then once you begin to see, oh, hey, look, this is a stone. Hey, this is a stone I can pick up in my hand. Oh, I can move this stone. Look, I can pick it up and I can move it. Oh, look, this is a scarf. It's tied around this hand. It's stopping my hand from moving in this way. Hey, what if I unknotted the
Yeah.
scarf?
It becomes
So
tangible.
yes, and I think that's what's really helped me is, okay, what are the things? It's not if I want to say, what wants to be expressed.
Yes.
If I
Well,
imagine there's rivers flowing, upwards in me, up come or like up through my fingers or my toes, or these things that are just flowing, that just want, and it helps me to think of it, if it's a river or something tangible,
Mhm.
if that river, this is something we could do. Okay, if there's a river that's underground, that's in
Mhm.
you, it's an underground river, and at a certain point it comes out to the surface, the way that underground rivers sometimes do. They're going around underground, and at one point they come out to the surface. When that water comes out to the surface, what does it look like for you?
Effervescent bubbles. Not a geyser necessarily, but like a spring bubbling and yeah.
And in those bubbles, do you see any images at all? Do you smell any smells in the bubbles?
No, it's almost like I'm sensing release and joy. Not even joy, that's not even quite the right word, but like a glee.
Glee.
Yeah.
The river of glee. So Raquel, you have a river. When the river emerges from underground,
Yeah.
it is a river of glee. And so one of the things you could write about in your journal, what is that glee made of? You know, what are the sounds of glee for you in your life or out of your life or whatever that, what are the sounds of glee? You know, what are the smells of glee? What does glee taste like? And then you could ask the glee, dear river of glee, where do you want to take me? For example, that would
Wow.
be a playful way of just seeing what happens, perhaps.
Wow. You know, it's funny that we're talking about that because I don't know if anybody's picked up on this lately yet, but I'm a little loud. I can be a little loud
You're not loud.
and vocal and emotive. I remember for years and years and years and years thinking that I had to not laugh loudly, that I had to be smaller in my laughter,
Yeah.
right? And that doesn't happen anymore.
Mm.
Because
There's
you got a river of glee.
I do, baby. I do. A whole river of glee bubbling
That's
up.
great.
Yeah, and it's so funny because yeah, my laughter isn't small and quiet anymore, and it hasn't been for a very long time. But
Yeah.
yeah, I let myself laugh fully and loudly now.
Mm.
Thank you.
Ole, yay.
Yeah, in a way, that's my catalyst expression. That's me.
Mm.
That's one way that I use my voice. I really have to give credit and gratitude to a friend of mine, this woman, Claire, who has this boisterous, all encompassing laugh. It's like she's laughing with her whole body, and it's literally just the coolest thing.
Mm.
And I remember when I met her, I was like, that's what I want. Everybody should be able to laugh fully, and their whole body should just be involved in the laughter. Like the laughter should sound like it just comes up from your toes. She's one of the first people that I like specifically remember that I thought she totally utilizes her laughter. She's not afraid of her laughter being loud. And that
Mm.
inspired me.
That's beautiful. That's such a strong memory from the river of glee. That's what I was saying. I feel like there's like a poem in you. There's like a spoken word poem or like a poem, an embodied poem, Raquel, that
Mhm.
begins, that has the river of glee, your memories in the river of glee, the catalyst from the river of glee. I don't know. I think that would be really cool.
Yes. Oh yeah,
I see
that's
another
going in.
post,
Mhm.
another post on Medium.
Yep, it's going in my little notebook of
Yeah.
my stirrings that are,
Well,
yeah.
the two of you, I know we're having a lot of fun, but we are running out of time.
Okay.
Was
Bummer.
there anything, Shebana, that you wanted to tell our audience that we didn't give you the chance to?
I just want to encourage people to just stand up in your story in however way and laugh your laugh and find your rivers of glee. And I really believe there's hope. I want to feel the hope by saying it out loud. Like, this is
Mhm.
the time when change can happen, when it is needed the
Yes.
most. And everything we've talked about here has been so, I've been so inspired, and it's been great to feel all your energy. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. If people wanted to work with you, how would they get a hold of you?
My website is called shebanacoelho.com for my name.
I will put that in the show notes. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Onwards.
Onwards and upwards and playfully.
And everywhere.
Yes, playfully. Yes. I love it. Shibana, this was such a delightful
It was
conversation.
very fun. It was a very
Thank
fun
you.
conversation.
Yeah,
Lots of fun. Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. Take care.
You
Bye.
too.
Bye.
Bye.
Do you want to recap, Raquel?
I do. The whole idea of play and embodiment and just movement, and that can be a tool to find your voice. Two parts of this thought for me. One, play just gets dismissed. Like, meh, play doesn't matter. Meh, nobody needs to play. Play is for children, right?
Not anymore.
Well, sure, yeah. And then the second part of that is, oh, I have to find my voice. Oh my God, that is so daunting. How do I do that? But you know what? The two can come together. Even if you find one before the other, finding that one can lead you to the other one. I just think that's an important thing for us to hold, that play is important and play can help you in so many ways that maybe we're not allowed to think about because of the rat race and the hustle and the grind and all the things.
And because of societal expectations.
Exactly.
Like my daughter Olivia and I really were out playing in the rain last night. What was interesting to me in that conversation is I was talking with my daughter and she was like, I love to be in the rain. And I was like, I love to be in the rain too. But we rarely leave our houses in the rain. Or we rarely, if it's too hot, if it's snowing out, if it's rain, if it's too cold, we don't go out and feel what that feels like. And actually, once you're out, as long as you're dressed properly, within about 10 or 15 minutes, you're actually enjoying nature. I guess one of the things that really stuck out to me today is asking, what is it that I still need to release? Or what is it that my body wants to feel? Or what is it? And then here's the kicker question that I think is so fascinating from our discussion today is, what is the bottom line of your lineage? Have you ever thought of that before?
Oh my God, no, I haven't.
Me neither.
But that's huge.
Yeah. When I was thinking about what Shebana was talking about, I thought, oh, the bottom line of my lineage is education. Everyone in my family was an educator. It was all about, you must get educated. You must go to school. And I went to college. I had no idea what I wanted to go to college for, but you must go. And education is highly valued to the point where my family, I think they were actively trying to be anti-racist. I think they were actively trying to be feminist. But one of the things that they kind of overlooked is because they were into education, they were kind of elitists without really realizing that that is also a position of discrimination, of self-righteousness, of privilege, of being better than others, and that, so education has this beautiful side to it, but it also has this side that causes,
it's a bit exclusive,
that causes separation. Maybe I am better than you because I am educated.
And here's another thing though, whose definition of educated and how is the person educated? Because there's plenty of people who have a college degree, but have no idea what's going on in the world.
Right.
Don't read a book, don't learn things.
Right.
Just, but then there's some
But it's
people
just,
who have just, like second grade education and probably incredibly intelligent.
exactly. But it just made me think of, what is that bottom line of the lineage? I've never thought about it before. What's the bottom line of your lineage?
I knew you were going to ask me that. And I honestly,
Nothing comes to mind because that just sprung right into my mind.
It is a hard one for me to answer, but now that I'm thinking about it, because yes, education hugely important in my family, but education as a way out and an education as a way forward and away from lack of opportunity. So it's almost
not education. It's about find your path to no,
it's almost like education is as a tool or as a method from running away from lack to run toward opportunity.
Could it be thriving rather than surviving?
That's a much more positive spin on what I said and what was churning in my brain when I was saying it. So yeah, absolutely. That makes more
Like
sense.
maybe your bottom line of lineage is we are going to thrive.
Ah, yes.
I don't know. I'm just
Yeah.
speaking.
No,
I'm just
no,
putting words out there.
no, but that makes sense. And like I said, that is a much more positive and much more hopeful and purposeful spin. Because when I was thinking it, I was thinking we're just running. We're just running away from stuff. As opposed to we're journeying toward thriving.
We're being pulled to the vision. I really, really liked this conversation today.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really interesting to, as a family who probably could be seen as the colonizer, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think it's an interesting perspective to also know that I was also colonized.
Yes.
But in different ways, obviously.
Right.
Not to belittle any other person's colonization
no.
history, that we can kind of go back into ourselves first and dissect this. And let's use movement and writing and journaling and dancing to like, let's get it out of our bodies so that we can be who we were meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we can go back and heal parts of our lineage so that we can bring the best pieces forward, like that part of your lineage that is moving towards thriving.
Mm-hmm.
Let's bring and the part of my lineage that was focused on education. Sure, yes, education's good, but let's not
forget everybody else. Let's bring everybody else along too.
Let's rise together.
Mm-hmm.
And that perhaps is what we were talking about, the difference between masculinized culture.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we move fully towards a feminized culture. We move towards a culture where they're balanced.
Right. And we've talked about this countless times. We as people, we as a society, we as a country, we as individuals need to bring more of that divine feminine in, because we're all, we're out of balance. There's way too much of the masculine.
Yeah, but
but it's not balanced. There isn't enough feminine right now that's enough to balance out the masculine. That's what we need.
I think we have the masculine and overload, and we need to call in the divine feminine, but we also need to call in the divine masculine, because the masculine we have right now is not divine.
That's a very good point. That's a very good clarification. Yeah.
To me, that's
a very good distinction, and I think that's important.
We could talk about this all day.
Oh yeah. And I'm sure we will talk about it many more times.
What a great conversation. I really enjoyed having Shebana on the podcast. I didn't know what a creativity coach is. I didn't really know wholly what to expect from her work. And I'm just like really in awe.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to jump into it.
Yeah. It's putting worth to creativity and to play. These things have an important place in our lives, and we need to take advantage of that. And I think we'd all be probably a lot happier if we did.
Yeah. And I think that our listeners should take a little time to play today and write us a really fun 5-star review.
Yes. Oh, love it.
Bye, Raquel.
Bye, Jennifer. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend.
Or you could leave us a comment and a 5-star review, or email us at madnesscafepodcast@gmail.com.
Thanks, everybody. Hi, everyone. This is Raquel.
Hi, and this is Jennifer.
Welcome to Madness. Hi, everyone. This is Raquel.
Hi, and this is Jennifer.
Welcome to Madness.